Welcome to New Earth Lifestyles. I'm JaneE King, your host of the show and producer. Thank you for joining us today in downtown Manchester, New Hampshire, August 28, 2014. Today's a call-in show, so I believe there's a telephone number on your screen if you'd like to call in and ask questions. So we're winding down summer, the end of August. Kids are going back to school. Kids are in school already in a lot of places. And days are getting shorter. My guest today is Barbara Woolley. Welcome, Barb.
Well, thank you for having me, Janie, since we concocted what we wanted to do.
Yes, we certainly did.
Yes, we did.
We concocted a different type of an interview today, and Barbara decided to interview me, so this should be interesting. So let's have a gong on that one.
I think you should double gong it.
Double gong it.
And it's good. I've had questions, and I'm sure lots of other people have had questions, and so it will be fun to be able to ask you some things.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun hour. And before we get going on that, I just wanted to say that I did send it out on Facebook that if anyone wanted to call in today to ask me any questions that we don't have listed on our list, then please feel free to do so. Anything that you might have ever wanted to ask me, whether you've watched the show or not, or whether you know me from drum making or from energy healing or from being family or friend. However, any information or any questions are all welcome, because I'm here to be of service and let you know who I am and why I'm here. Maybe it'll help you to see who you are and why you are here, as the whole point of this show is to bring the shifting consciousness that's on the planet out into the world. So bringing new ideas, new ways of looking at your life, new ways of finding health and happiness for you into an awareness, so that we all as a community, as a society, as a world can live from a better place, from a place of love and contentment and health, ideally full health. So thanks for joining us today. I'm going to gong on that. And Barb, you can begin the interview when you're ready. This will be fun.
Oh, I'm ready. So we're going to start early on. So when you were a little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up? Do you remember?
Interesting. Well, from my training on energy healing training, that's one of the questions I normally ask my clients, because that has a lot to do with what you become in your life, I believe. And I loved to. I had ponies. I was very fortunate that I played with horses or ponies when I was really little. And my brother and I used to go out in the woods and play cowboys and Indians. And we always wanted to be able to go out in the woods and camp overnight when we were like 8 or 9. We used to go out to this place in Whitman. There was a place called the Spinning Wheel, which was a place that sold fabric. And we'd go way out in the woods behind there, and there was a little stream. And we'd pretend to make campfires and pretend to be Indians. So I always wanted to play with horses and play with Indians and be an Indian, I guess. And so, interestingly enough, I've gravitated toward that by making drums and learning shamanic practices, healing ways. So isn't that fascinating?
I think it's fascinating, because the seeds are always there, even if we don't recognize them.
Right.
In the beginning, it's just kind of a natural trajectory to follow that.
Isn't it? Mm-hmm.
Did you have any notion when you were growing up about the kind of work that you're doing now? Any idea that that's where you would go?
I can't say that when I grew up I had any thoughts of goals or where I was going to be when I grew up, or how. I kind of went one day at a time. Lots of people are taught to have dreams about a house and family, or where do you want to live, and I can't say that I ever had any dreams around that, so I really was not focused on what I wanted to do when I grew up, I guess. Very interesting, because I kind of lived with these blinders on of just going in front of myself one step at a time, and not having any direction, so to speak.
And actually there are a lot of people similar.
Really?
Really.
Well, that's good to know I'm not alone.
You're definitely not alone, not at all. So the little impish aspect of me says, so, okay, so we've asked, what did you want to be when you grew up? And of course, here you are doing the shamanic practice and making drums and
Yep.
leading ceremony and doing what really sets your heart on fire, what is your passion. And of course, that goes out to everybody that gets to experience you. And my drum, I will say, is made in the presence of JaneE King drum, a bear drum. So
yes.
that's my second drum made with JaneE. And so always the question, too, is, are you grown up?
Wow. It's gong on that one. Of course not. Would a grown-up be gonging a gong and banging on drums?
I hope not.
What is it? What is being grown up? I don't really know. That's a good question, because all my life I've been waiting to grow up. I think. I always thought that once you had a house and a home and children, then you would grow up, because I don't have any children. I never had children, and I always thought you needed children to actually become mature, because then you have, I don't know, the little ones to kind of be a grown-up with. And I never had any children, so I didn't think I'd ever grow up, and maybe I don't. Maybe there's no such thing as growing up. What is growing up? I don't know. I don't. I'm finding more about who I am, and finding that I don't want to grow up. I want to continue to have fun and to find things that bring joy into my life, and to be who I truly am, goofy.
Right. So we have, it's an interesting conundrum in our world, that to be grown up, to become grown up. And does that mean we have to give up fun? Does it mean we have to give up playfulness and that spirit of adventure? I hope not.
I guess
I don't want to be that.
You either.
No.
So if you've grown, you think you've grown up?
God, no. Perpetual child.
All right. Well, gong on that one too.
Okay, that's great.
Perpetual children sitting here.
So here you were, this young girl with your brother, running around the woods, riding horses, loving that outdoor world, making pretend campfires and so on. But at a certain point along the way, something shifted your gears so that you got onto some kind of trajectory in your life that was purposeful and focused. And so I know that, in part of your life you work with numbers, okay, and that's something that you do. But there was a point in time where you were jump-started into the kind of work that you love doing, which is your shamanic practice. So I'm wondering if you remember, was there a particular incident or something that you remember that jet propelled you onto your, what we would call your path?
Right.
Yes.
Well, I think the jet fuel was pain, unfortunately. The first, I have to go back to physical pain first, and then after that it was emotional pain of relationship in my workplace with something that people did that I thought very highly of, that I felt they were snubbing me right to my face, and it devastated me emotionally. And that's really what propelled me to seek help, to seek therapeutic help. And I have to say, from that moment on, my life has not been the same ever since. And so it was thinking that someone was really hurting me. Someone was doing something. These coworkers, I felt, were doing something to me, and how could I must have something wrong with me for them to do this to me. And then when I got into therapy, after maybe a year or so or more, I realized that they were only acting toward me the way I act toward the world. So they were mirroring for me myself, and it was very emotionally painful for a long time.
But that's a big learning.
A huge learning.
Wow.
Yes, that changed my life. That's the one thing that propelled me into seeking something's got to be better than this, because Looking back, when I'm looking at Robin Williams's life, because he's so much, present, his loss is so huge for all of us. Depression is huge, and I look back at my life and say, I've been depressed all of my life, or before I had been depressed and didn't know it really, and kind of lived in this little closed-in kind of world. And then once I got into therapy, I realized how depressed I've been, and even throughout, was in therapy for many years actually, and
Me too.
I felt it was very, very detrimental to my psychological health, my happiness, to have someone to talk to about what was going on, especially when I had lost my mother at one point, and then other things happened. So I thought it was a very valuable experience for me, but I didn't realize until I was probably 8 or 9 years into therapy, and that I've been depressed, terribly depressed all my life. And it was been pretty much in the last few years that I really realized that and have really found a way to alleviate that.
So what helped you to alleviate that?
What helped me?
Yeah.
The biggest thing was an herbal supplement, I have to
Okay.
say. And my therapist recommended that to me. And when I started taking it, it's a balancing tincture that I took. And it's made out of root herbs from Siberia, actually. And it actually brought balance into my life. And it didn't take away my emotions, but it brought the highs and the lows into more of a even keel rather than how high, because I was almost manic depressive, up and down. And sometimes I still think I can be because I'm not taking that supplement right now. And every now and then I do start taking it again because I can feel that coming up again every now and then. And as many people have Facebooked about Robin Williams, depression is something that can be so debilitating, and the thoughts that you have when you're depressed, you cannot get out of that downward spiral. And so I'm thankful. So the name of this particular, if you want me to tell you the name of it, was rhodiola.
Oh,
And you can
okay.
get it at any health food store pretty much in their tincture area, and it's all made out of the root of rhodiola in tincture form, and with herbs you have to take it over a long period of time for it to really settle in and do its work. And that is something that I highly recommend and does work.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yes, nature has an incredible arsenal to help us.
Yes, it does.
The roots, the buds, there's many different ways to work with that. So, at a certain point, you headed off to Barbara Brennan School of Healing. And what got you there? What prompted you?
Well, again, this was part of my therapeutic process. I was very fortunate to be hooked in right away with a therapist that embraced the New Age, down-to-earth movement, I guess you could say, and was recommending the health food store, which was new for me, the alternative bookstore, which was new to me, and being healthy, being conscious about what I put in my body in all different ways. It became more evident to me. And I asked her a question one day about crystals, and because I was new to rocks and stones too, what do crystals do? How do you use crystals? And she, for some reason, pulled off Barbara Brennan's book out of her bookcase and thought she could look it up in that book. Well, I think that there's one place in there that does talk about how Barbara uses crystals to remove stuff, but it wasn't really a big thing. But just by her pulling that book off the shelf, for some reason, it just flooded me with this awareness. And then, I don't know when it was, sometime later, I saw that Barbara Brennan was coming to Boston. I saw a flyer at the health food store on the bulletin board. And so those two things came together. Very simple things that you wouldn't think of relating to each other, but they came together, and I went to Boston to see Barbara Brennan through a Thursday night program. It was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday program, and I just went for her lecture Thursday night, and I was just totally blown away by the love that I experienced from everyone in the audience. It was in a ballroom of a few hundred people, 500, 300, I don't know, big ballroom full of people. And all the people that were there, I was just feeling the love. And then when Barbara Brennan came on stage, she came on like feeling the audience. I could see her like, at the time I didn't know she was feeling the audience, but when looking back, I realized she was just checking out all the energies of the audience, and she did her preliminary PowerPoint program for the night of basics of energy fields and chakras and stuff. So, but it was basically love that attracted me.
Wow.
Yeah, and I come from a big family, but I didn't realize the type of love that I felt there from people I didn't know was palpable. That it's really here.
So it was different.
Totally different than anything I'd ever experienced. Yeah.
How long did it take you to sign up for the program?
Well, the next year I went to the weekend program, so I could have probably signed up, but I was such a rigid accountant, I couldn't call in work Friday and not go. So the next year I went for the weekend program, and then I really wanted to go to the school after that, and then I needed a university level anatomy physiology course, so I decided before I'm going to invest in going to her school, I need to know if I can study and learn, because I was older then. I was 45, I think. So I didn't know if I could get back into the studying routine of learning anatomy physiology, so I took that for the next year, the whole 2 semesters of...
That was really smart.
Yes. And once I passed that, and I immersed myself in anatomy physiology, which was very interesting to know anyway. I highly recommend that we all know about our bodies and how our body works. And then the next year I went, so it took me 3 years actually after seeing her to actually sign up and go.
That's okay.
Because I'm a Virgo, and that's what we do. We put our little toe in and test the waters over and over. Make sure that everything's lined up right before we can do it.
Yep. But you were really following the clues. That's how I refer it. They're laid in, and you took them in a way that you could take them in, and follow them step by step in your timing, because everybody's got their own timing of how to do this. But how wonderful that you listened and you learned and you followed and you pursued what has become your life's passion. Yeah.
Quite amazing. And what's amazing is the courage that I look back and realize that just stepping into therapy and opening up that whole, just having courage to talk to another person about my life, that was huge. And initially, I remember my therapist hypnotized me or took me into this deep, she did a little journey of relaxation on me, and I was terrified to let her do that to me, or do that, not to me, but do that in the process. And it was like a letting go of my control over me. And I think that's part of what therapy was about, is when you tell someone your life story, or you're talking about your deepest troubles or your deepest worries, whatever's going on in your life, and you trust this person so much you can really say it out loud and know it's not going anywhere. Where that, to me, was gave me courage. It gave me, for some reason, it let me be okay with whatever the next step was.
It was an important foundation.
Yes.
For the next step.
Yes, very important.
You wouldn't have taken that next step if you hadn't done that, probably.
No, I would not.
Or something else would have happened to propel you to keep moving.
Right, and when I look back at my professional life, I realize I've always been seeking help, and I just didn't know I was looking for therapeutic help. I didn't know what kind of help I was looking for. But I know I've always been looking for knowing that what I'm doing is not making me happy, or knowing that there's more out there, that there's more out there that I'm not experiencing.
So it's like the itch that needs to be scratched, right?
Yeah, I guess.
You're right. And the relief comes from the next step, wherever it takes you.
Right, and
yeah. So the style of energy healing that you offer to people is called integrative energy healing, or how do you define it? And what does that mean?
The energy healing that I do, I guess integrative would be a good word. I never have put that word on it before. I've been searching for what to call it, because it's integrated from Barbara Brennan's work and from shamanic practices and other teachers. Some Buddhism. I've done retreats In Buddhism, I've done some we work with what do you call it? The Tracker School, which is
right.
survival training in the wilderness, and different workshops along the way. I've kind of integrated that, I guess is a good word, into what I do. So there's really not a ABC. This is what I do. I know there's like the word of Reiki. I have a Reiki practitioner as well, but I don't call what I do Reiki. It's just something that's divinely guided, and I have all these tools that I've learned along the way that are available in my healing room to call upon, and not only physical tools, but all the divine tools that come through by practicing what I do, practicing the way I practice, for being who I am, and for my desire to be of service, I think.
So you're synthesizing as you're learning.
Yes.
And then integrating it.
Right, I guess you could say
into the work that you're doing. Right.
Mm-hmm. Right, and so it's I believe that spirit or God or creator, source energy is kind of all here, kind of supporting me, because I'm doing what I'm here to be doing. And they're all supporting, whatever that is supporting me, and also supporting the client or the person or the group in supporting what they're asking for in a divine way, because they're coming to me and asking for help, and I'm calling on my helpers to come in and facilitate the help.
So you and I know that not everybody talks like this.
True, we don't talk like this normally.
Or
Integrating
we do
and facilitating.
when we're together. So so your life path is different from probably many people around you. Yeah. So what do you think that's about? Why is that so?
Well, I'm having difficulty with that in some respects, because I have a big family, and last weekend they went off camping, and I found out they went camping, and I'm just thinking, gee, well, I wonder why they didn't invite me to go camping with them. And then I guess it was a spur of the moment thing, and that's okay. And so this weekend they've invited me to go camping.
Okay.
The long weekend, and it feels really good. And then I'm saying, well, what am I going to talk about with them? Because we don't have a lot in common. I mean, we do like to sit around the campfire and and to talk, but we don't talk this language that you and I talk, and get into these other esoteric types of discussions, and when I try and express things to them from my perspective, they kind of don't know where I'm going with it, because
exactly.
It's a whole different jargon. It's a whole different language that we speak, being energy healers and having this outlook on life that we're all connected, and that God is in everything and everywhere. And it can be difficult. So
it's really hard to explain why it's so. It's almost like we're living in different worlds simultaneously.
It could be, but
dimensions or
and
whatever.
Different dimensions, and we are striving to be everywhere all the time, and coming from a place of where everyone else has come, or the so-called Western world is coming from the place of duality of us versus them, or you're there and I'm here. But you and I are coming into this world now of desiring to be one. Me seeing myself in you, you seeing yourself in me. I'm part of everything and everyone. So getting away from the duality. We're really working. I believe that people in the energy movement, if you want to call it, or this awakening, conscious awakening that seems to be happening. We're wanting to be one with everyone and embrace the world as our whole community, rather than where we came from, which is everyone's separate, and over there they're doing this, they're fighting each other and competition and all that. I'm really moving away from that and wanting to complement each other and know that we cooperate.
Right.
We want to be cooperative people, not competitive. And
so the truth to me would be that we're pinging each other as we intersect, so that we can keep refining.
We're pinging each other
ourselves.
so that we can refine ourselves. That's an interesting concept. I like that. It feels good.
So it's not right or wrong, good or bad. It's just always an opportunity to grow and to learn.
Always an opportunity,
Yeah.
to be pinged. Let's be pinged.
Oh, what are you doing? We're just pinging around.
Isn't that a golf thing?
Or ponging.
Or ponging.
Ping pong.
Oh, ping pong. Yes, we're ping ponging. We are ping ponging.
Right. And this is where this childishness, wonderful play comes in. We can laugh about the silliest things. So,
We can.
what do
We want
you believe is humanity's purpose, Janie?
That's a big question. Dun, 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 dun. Humanity's purpose?
Right.
I am a member of humanity, even though I'd like to back off and say, I don't know, I'm not a member of humanity, but I really have to say I am, because I guess I am a member of the human race.
Mm-hmm.
What is the human purpose?
I mean, as you live your life, what do you come to think is the point of it all?
Right. The point of it all for me is to live and to love and to harm no one. And the difficulty in that is that I'm always harming myself by my thoughts. And therefore I'm always harming someone else by my thoughts, but the goal, I believe, is for us to live in harmony as the indigenous cultures, most indigenous cultures, they were not in this place of ownership of the earth, or ownership of things. When there was a tribe, they all came together and helped each other. They all came together and fed each other. There was an amazing moth hour. Have you ever heard of the moth hour on
I don't know
public
what
radio?
that is. No.
Well, it's these people have these stories, and they have 5 minutes to stand up and just say it with no paper, with no notes. Talk about something, a story about their own life that's true. It's called the Moth Hour. So every 5 minutes, a different person would come up and speak. It's on public radio, and I heard it on Saturday a couple of weeks ago. This particular guy, he'd been in Africa, and he was terribly depressed, and he was impressed with the fact that this African group, the village, had a method of healing depression, healing totally depression. And so he asked them, "Oh, can I see that ceremony sometime when you do that?" And they said, "Oh yeah, that might happen in the next 6 months." Well, he was going to only be there for a couple of days, so he couldn't wait around. So then he said, "Well, don't you have anything happening sooner?" And they said, "No, but if you'd like, we can do it with you." And his friends kind of cautioned him, because this was an African village, what do you call it? Yeah, indigenous, or
A tribe.
a tribe. Yeah, they're living off the land. And so he agreed to do it. And they gave him this whole list of things he had to do, and it was going to happen tomorrow. So he was with an interpreter, I think he was with, that was helping him find. And he had this list of things that he had to get together for this ceremony that was going to happen tomorrow, like 8 yards of African cloth and certain kind of herbs and certain kind of this, and a ram.
A ram?
A male sheep.
Okay.
A ram. And so that was kind of odd. And so he's running around that whole day with his interpreter getting all these things. And he kept saying, "Well, where do we get a ram? Where do we get a ram?" The guy kept saying, "No, don't worry about it, don't worry about it." So the next day, they're driving to the village to the ceremony, and there's a sheep herder with sheep on the road, and they jump out and they ask him if they can buy a ram, and for $2 or $3, I think he said, they bought a ram. So they bring all this stuff to the ceremony. Well, this is an all-day process, and the whole village comes out. The whole village stops what they're doing. The whole village comes and surrounds this man in this whole ceremony. It was an all-day ceremony. And, of course, they had to use the ram blood, and he had to do all these amazingly things that we would think of as terrible, things. I can't think of the words, but at the end of the day, because the whole community came out and he did this whole ceremony, his depression was gone.
He didn't have time to think about it.
But the whole community was there witnessing all these things he had to go through that were totally out of his awareness. I mean, he had to sleep in the bed with the ram, and then, of course, they had to give up. They had to kill the ram, and then he had to do something with the blood of the ram and the fabric and all these herbs, and he's doing all these things that they're telling to do, and the people that are there supporting him, drumming and all kinds of holding space for him. But it was the fact that he was outside in fresh air, and the community, these people, they didn't even know him, but they were supporting him.
They were willing to support him.
Yes, because they knew that he needed help.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to get, not that we need to do all quite, the same detail, but the community aspect of we are all one, we come together and help each other is lacking in the Western world. And I believe if we can get back to that, if we can get back to helping our neighbor, and that's another thing that I was reading about Robin Williams's people that knew him, that were Facebooking about how they knew him. He helped homeless people. And he had, there's a thing called, I forget what they call it, but it's like the rules of him being on stage. When you employed him to come up and act, he had certain requirements that you had to fulfill for him to come up and perform in your venue. And one of them was they had to hire homeless people.
Wow.
I never knew that.
I didn't know that.
And he was so into community and helping lift up the people that needed it the most. And that's what our society needs. That's what we need to be doing as human beings, I believe, is those small acts of kindness.
So, and it doesn't have to be that big or that dramatic.
Whatever you can do.
Whatever you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It might just be a smile.
It could be. Saying hello to somebody.
Right.
Asking them how they're doing.
Exactly. Paying attention to a person that doesn't normally have anyone to pay attention to them.
And I'm thinking, with the ceremony, the drumming circles, the full moon circles, the new moon circles, all of that you offer, it's community. And there's, like what happened to the man who goes to the tribe in Africa, there's something beyond explanation about the power of that. It's bigger than our minds can actually compute.
Absolutely. It's not something we can write down on paper and prescribe. I mean, you cannot say A, B, C, D, and therefore this. You cannot, there's no magical formula. It's, I believe, you have all these hearts and tensions calling in the source energy of all that there is. And everyone's seeing themselves in this person in the middle that was the ceremony was for. And not seeing each other as different, but seeing each other as the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And not seeing each other as, crazy dancing around a fire barefoot with a grass skirt on or something, but just acknowledging, so that's a little different than I'm used to, but I'm going with it,
And you have been going with it. So it makes me think of, walking across the hot coals.
Oh, yes, I've never done that one.
Well, I did do that.
Oh.
And it was interesting because the only way to do it is to not think about it.
Uh-huh.
You just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you start thinking about it, you'll feel it.
And you'll be like,
and burn your feet. And so who are we that we can just not feel that? What's going on there?
So what do you think is going on there?
Well, I think we're much more than mind.
Uh-huh.
And I haven't really thought about it this way until you asked that question. But it's like, if we think about the construct of the physical world, it's not exactly, as I've come to understand, it's not exactly like we think it is, or that we've been taught to think that it is. So, you do energy healing. So do I. Mm-hmm. We're trained shamanically. Mm-hmm. And so we work with other energies who most people don't see. Mm-hmm. But somehow we know they're there. Okay, and we feel them and we can hear them and we're guided by them and mm-hmm. Do the work. But there is a capacity to work with the body that transcends, that goes way beyond how were originally taught to understand the physicality of the body. Otherwise, certain things wouldn't happen.
Right.
Right.
Right, and so that kind of moves us toward our multi-dimensional beingness, I guess you could say, or multi-dimensional. The physical is one dimension, or the first, second, and third dimensions, and some people want to count dimensions. Some people say there's only 8 or 18. I don't know, but I think there's an infinite number of dimensions that are here right now, and that I think that's what we're tapping into, is those unseen. You can call them worlds, or dimensions, or vibrations, frequencies.
Right.
That are here right now and are who we are. And so that kind of also moves us into, when we shed this physical body, we still are that.
Yes.
That which is unseen.
We're something unseen.
Unseen physically.
And yet can be quite tangible at times.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting.
It is interesting.
It's all interesting. So there's so much to continue to learn. So I'm wondering for you, so you had therapy and you experienced Barbara Brennan enough to go to 4 years of intense training. And so those were pivotal experiences. And as you've continued to learn, what have been some of the other pivotal teachings that you've been exposed to?
Well, before I went to Barbara Brennan School, I went to an herb symposium that I've spoken about before. And it was a summer solstice weekend in Wheaton, Massachusetts, at Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts. And that night, when I came home that Sunday night, I actually had an experience that my husband could not see. We were woken up in the middle of the night, like at 2 a.m, with a thunderstorm. And I looked out the window, and I saw a monolith in our backyard in the pouring rain. It was probably 30 feet tall. I don't know, it went up. It was like gray, and I don't know, something. It was huge, and I saw it, and I stared at it out the window. And my husband had gone and used the bathroom, and he came back, and I said, "Richard, look at this." Well, as soon as he looked at it. He said, "Look at what?" Oh my God. Well, I went berserk, because I had just been standing there looking at this thing for, while he was in the bathroom, and he comes out and he can't see it. And so that put me into another dimension. So that happened before I went to Barbara Brennan School, and so that happened from coming home from this herb conference of my first introduction to drumming, actually, because they had been drumming that Saturday night around, it wasn't a full moon, but it was the solstice weekend. And at that herb symposium, there were teachers there from all around the world. It was an international herb symposium, and just, I think, being in the presence of these amazing healers, being an accountant. I'm still an accountant. I'm still going to work every day. That may have been the initial shift. It might not have even been the one with the people in my work that changed me. This is probably the pivotal thing that I didn't realize was so pivotal. But when I saw that monolith, it was as real as the rain. It was raining out. And subsequently to that, after I'd gone to Barbara Brennan School my senior year, we were assigned to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I was absolutely never a science fiction person. I never watched science fiction movies. So we got to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey. So I'm watching it. And there on the moon is the monolith that I saw 5 years before that, or whatever, 6 or 7 years before that. I was amazed. That was the monolith I saw in my backyard. I don't know the connection. I don't know why, but it was an opening to another dimension that it gave me, I guess, the vibration or the frequency of knowing that there's more to life than what we can see. My husband couldn't see it, I could see it.
Right. And
I will never deny seeing it, because it was real. And so it was another dimension that he was not tuned into, that somehow that herbal conference got me, my vibration lifted, so I was tuned in.
Opened you up.
Opened me up. And I remember driving home from that conference that Sunday, going up 495, just bawling my eyes out and not knowing why. I just cried all the way home. And that was a new experience for me, too. But I was just, I guess, ready to be opened up. And so Spirit gave me one thing after the other from that. And I
Right.
think that's when that experience of my job with my coworkers doing something to me that I thought they did to me so hard, I had to have that happen in order for me to become who I am today. And that's what Richard Bartlett calls grace, and the opening up of the heart, and that place of being changed and not realizing you're being changed because it's so painful in the moment, or for a period of time. It was even a period of time that I was in this mushmash of why are these people doing this to me, when it really, that was the universe kind of giving me this shift that was difficult to go through, but I had to go through it to get out the other end.
Well, if we're really comfortable, there's no reason to change.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be something that creates enough of a chink in the armor
Mm-hmm.
to let something else out,
A chink in the
let
armor.
something else in.
Yes.
And then you got your validation in your 4th year watching Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, or 2001: A Space Odyssey, or whatever.
Right.
It was amazingly validating.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So you didn't imagine it.
No.
There's something about that that's significant to you.
Right.
Right.
It gave me, I
Mhm.
think it shifted, it helped me to realize that there is more to life than just this desk right here. And it's all around us right now, but we're just not tuned into that frequency to see it.
Right. So, and I'm remembering that Barbara Brennan was a NASA physicist.
She was
Right.
an atmospheric physicist, so she used to fly
Yeah.
planes around the Earth and measure the atmosphere.
And probably a whole lot more.
Probably. Well, going to you, Barbara. Probably a whole lot
And
more.
continuing, right.
Yes, because now
Yeah.
she can see. She has X-ray vision. Just actually, she can see into people's bodies and see what's going on with them and help them to heal. Because she's teaching now, or has schools now, so I don't think she's practicing her energy healing like she was. But yeah, and I think for her she needed to go through that school. She had to be a NASA physicist, a scientist in that way, in order for her to then move into this new area of frequencies that we can't see. So because she started seeing these, she sees a lot of these dimensions that we're trained not to see in the Western world. And I have to say that the indigenous cultures are not trained to not see them. I guess I
Right.
should say, because the shamanic people of Peru and most countries, they're raised from they're little of seeing of spirits and
It's just
energies.
natural.
It's just part of life for them.
Right.
Yeah. So in our culture, it's not part of it's been made taboo, probably from way back in the Inquisition times, or further back than that. But it's
Right.
been made.
The waxing and the waning
the wa-
of civilizations, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Thinking
Yeah.
it's voodoo or it's crazy, but it's just life. And the indigenous cultures know that.
So, how did you? I mean, I know you played cowboy and Indians when you were little. So, how did you begin to tap into that aspect of who you are and your work and
Which
so on?
aspect?
The indigenous,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it's such it's permeates everything you do.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does now.
So, how did you study with an elder? What happened? What did you do?
Well, I'll have to go back to Barbara Brennan's School of Healing, and our sophomore year was
Mm.
a year totally devoted to the astral plane, which is the fourth level of the energy field of the heart center. Totally devoted one year to the heart center and going into what she calls the astral plane, and which is where the shamanic people go, which is where a lot of the healing takes place. It's another way of being. And there were teachers there that were indigenous, Jane Eli and White Buffalo. There was a teacher named White Buffalo. And we actually did a soul retrieval at one of the events at school, and that's when I started doing more drums. I think that was the year actually that we started making drums, 1997.
Okay.
So It kind of was an organic process. It was not a big, I went to this person and did it. That was the same year that my lineage came to me, we always had this whisper in my family that we have Native American background, that we were a Wampanoag. And it was always never talked about, but it was like a whisper. And this third cousin of my father's actually came up to my father's house in New London with the paperwork that said, yes, our great-great-grandfather was Micmac and his wife was Wampanoag, and we do have this heritage. And that happened during my sophomore year. And so for me, that was a huge confirmation that had been denied all my life, that had been a shameful thing all my life.
Right.
I mean, my father didn't want to see this third cousin because he never wanted to know any of this. His father taught him never to know any of this because they were afraid of being killed. They were afraid of being discriminated against.
And they were.
And they were.
Absolutely.
And so they didn't want anyone to know that they had any Indian heritage. So that sophomore year was a huge one for me. And I remember at the end of the year that year, each class, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior, each class kind of did a program for the whole school. And there were 200 of us sophomores, and we did this, or maybe it was just a sophomore ceremony, I forget. But anyway, because it's sophomore year, the astral plane can be mucky and dirty, and all the goop and all the darkness, all the shadow stuff that you don't want to look at all comes up.
Yeah.
And so all of this all of the gunky stuff comes up, and so we had this ceremony in the middle of the whole school where we're all doing all these, had all these costumes on, and where each of us were playing the role of how we felt this year transformed us. And for me, I actually made a Native American shawl thing, or a thing out of leather, and I made myself into a stork. I had a stork beak, and I had
Stork
wings.
clan.
I was walking around like a stork. Around all these people are in these goopy black things, and so 200 of us were all doing this thing in the middle, and I'm being a stork because and I had a doll that I was rebirthing. This doll, it has all this paint all over it. But so it was a rebirthing for me. The stork was rebirthing
Oh, that's
me
perfect.
as a new human being, and that was my part of the ceremony. Personal to me, was I was rebirthing myself, and I forgot all about that. Thanks for reminding me.
Well, and I was just going to ask you, so what is stork medicine? Of course, duh.
Bringing in the babies.
Bringing in the babies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rebirthing.
Yeah.
And I remember I had this doll.
Yeah.
She was about this big, and I put a spiral on her third eye, and I had other paint on her face. And I remember sitting up in my room, and we had this friend of us that was living with us at the time, and he was bringing someone up to sell something that he was selling, and I thought, oh no, they're gonna see my doll. They're gonna think I'm crazy. This doll painted up with a spiral and all this stuff. And to this day, I never asked him how his
Well,
friend
that's
thought.
really curious, and you may not have the answer to this, but I wonder if the Micmac or the Wampanoag have a stork clan.
That is really curious.
Right.
I never thought of that.
Okay.
Well, we'll go on to the storks.
Ding. To rebirth, this is good, which we're continually doing.
Continually,
Continually.
Yes, because I'm not the stork anymore. I'm bear, I
Right.
think now, or something. I was bear. I don't know. We're all different totem animals in different times.
Absolutely.
Depending on what we need.
Yeah. So, you've talked about some pretty big aha moments.
Yes. And again, I'm going back to the courage, because I never thought I had courage, but all these things that happened give you courage, I think.
Help you continue on.
Help you keep on following that next step.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I said, I didn't have a plan. I still don't have a plan. I just am going one step at a time.
And that's a different way to approach life.
Well, some people think it's lazy. I always thought it was a lazy way that, you don't have a plan, you don't have a goal, you're not pushing towards something, you're not focusing on something. However, I'm realizing it's just my way of being.
Well, it's a different way of being,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not generally understood. But there's always a plan behind it, it seems to me. We just don't have to know it all.
Well, that's true. It's a plan we don't see.
We don't see, but it's
the greater
operative.
plan
Mhm.
from Creator kind of guiding us along. And I know I've been guided along because I have times in my life when I could have been injured or hurt or killed or maimed or whatever, different times. What I wasn't, I was taking from harm's way, or at least embraced in a way that I was safe in different moments. And so I know that I've been divinely held by the source energy, by God, you could say.
And you wind up in the right place for you at the right time.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Bingo. Ping. We're pinging.
Yeah.
Pinging and ponging. Pinging and ponging.
Pinging and
We never know
ponging.
where we're going to go. Life is
No,
good.
we don't, but that's what keeps it really interesting.
It does.
So there's always some anticipation.
Can be, yes. Some
Can be.
anxiety can come up.
But if we're always focused on what's ahead and what's out there, we miss the moment. We're not here now. So being here now is a wonderful thing.
It is if you can do it.
Well, it's a practice, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So have there been any other big teachings that you've exposed yourself to? Anything else you'd want to talk about in that way?
Well, I have gone on a vision quest.
Oh.
4-day, 4 prior nights, 4 days of fasting, 4 nights up on the hill.
Mm.
And then, well, I didn't do the 4 days of integrating, but the integrating was not as strenuous as the other 4. And getting into being with I have a people that I associate with, that I am in this group with, that I was sort of waiting for spirit to guide me there. I knew they were always there, but it's one thing led to another that I became participatory in their processes and the sweat lodges, and they're learning the ceremonies and the songs. And so I guess one of the big things that happened in this group was that one November we were rebuilding the sweat lodge and cleaning up the whole area, redoing it. There's a lodge, and then then there's the altar, and then there's the fire pit, and there's a lot of symbology around that.
Mm.
But during this weekend, I had gone over to volunteer to help, and I was assisting this other person cleaning up the altar area, because it was a pretty good, big round area that we put certain stones and certain objects on. Had grown up weeds, so we were cleaning that up. And I just mentioned to him if he was a pipe carrier. And a pipe carrier is a medicine man, or a person, or medicine person, or person that is really praying in this way. Really, it's a way of praying, carrying the pipe. And he said no, but a friend of ours had just given him a pipe stone to make his own pipe, and he had an extra one, and he talked to me, asked me if I was, and I said no, and it ended up that I was gifted a piece of the pipe stone that day. So for me, that was a huge turning point, and I was still in therapy at that time, and I brought it to show my therapist, and she was wondering why I couldn't speak. I was speechless with her, and she was wondering, why would this stone do this to me? Why would this stone make me so speechless and reverent? And because I shifted just being given this stone to hold and to go to bed. I slept with this stone, and I made a relationship with this pipe stone. It wasn't a pipe; it was just the square stone. Mm-hmm. So I have to say that was a huge change in my life, a huge shift of connecting with sanctity, because it happened in such an organic way. That morning, before I went to this cleanup day at the lodge, I had meditated and prayed and asked if I should ask my friend for a pipe stone, because it's something that I was curious about, and I didn't have to ask. It was gifted to me.
And that's it.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And so that was what was so sacred about it.
Mm-hmm.
It was sacred because Spirit did it. I didn't do anything. And that's how, if you follow those things in your life, that's how life becomes more and more and more of who you truly are.
And when those moments happen, you just know them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You do. You
Yeah.
do. And so we'll gong on that, because our time is up. I know time went by quickly.
It
1 hour
did.
flew by. Thank you so much. And we didn't get to talk about our drums, but maybe
No,
the
we
next
didn't,
time.
but that's okay.
So thank you for joining us today. It was a really fun. Thank you, Barb, for being my interviewer.
It was fun, Janie. Thank you.
Yeah, what a great time. This was great. So I hope you can join us next week, but thank you for joining us today. Next week on my show, I will have Saul Solomon, who was here a couple months ago, and then the week after that, Steve Wilson and Betty Connerton will be here talking about their new book. And then the week after that, I have Wendy Gilker. So my whole schedule is full of wonderful people coming up in the next few Thursdays. So thank you for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing you next week. But remember, until then, your heart knows the way.